Hi, everybody. This is Ross Pallone, and welcome to the second season of the Ross Around Backstage podcast, where I enjoy bringing you interviews with people who work in the entertainment business. I'm very fortunate that I've been able to make a living in the music business for over 40 years, working as a recording engineer, live sound engineer, and producer. I hope you will enjoy listening to my interviews with people who also make their living in the entertainment business. Hi, everybody. This is Ross Pallone. I'm here in Las Vegas, and I'm visiting with my brother-in-law, Duke Mollner, who has a very interesting life in show business, and he's going to share that with you now. I've known Duke for a long time. He's a great guy and a very talented person, and I'm anxious to hear his entire story. So here we go, Duke. How'd you get into this crazy business?
The crazy business of life, I guess. Are we talking about the dancing part?
Well, let's start from the beginning. Okay, so you, I do know that early on in your life, you went to college, and right out of college, you went in the Marine Corps, and
sure.
I think that's kind of where things started, right?
Well, that's true.
Well, actually, maybe before that, in high school, you were active in.
I was very active
drama.
In high school as far as theater went.
Right.
In 1959, I saw a film called West Side Story, and it just blew me right out of my chair. The dancing was strong. It was jazz. It was very exciting, and I really wanted to be able to do something like that. So after graduating high school, being in a couple of their plays, I went to San Fernando Valley State College, which had just opened, as a theater arts major. And that was quite a wonderful 4 years of doing all kinds of plays. During that time, I did a number of musicals. They opened the school's theater arts department with Finian's Rainbow, which was a wonderful musical off of Broadway. I was lucky enough to get the leading role in that. That was my senior year in school, and we had a lot of success with that.
Were you that you were the lead? Now, was that a musical?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know that story, but yeah.
Finian's Rainbow. It's about a leprechaun searching for a pot of gold, and he's a full-size leprechaun. It was a wonderful show in New York. We had big crowds coming, and the show was a big success. From that, I really wanted to learn or start learning jazz dancing. So I was able to find a school, the American School of Dance in Hollywood, with a really wonderful jazz teacher, Carlton Johnson. And I began taking jazz class once or twice a week, as often as I could.
Now, this was while you were still in college, right?
While I was still in college.
All right, so you weren't in the Marines yet?
No.
Okay.
Allowing me to go to college draft-free was a program the Marines offered when I was in high school that my father suggested maybe I should look into. That was an officer training program. And they allowed me to go to college draft-free if I gave them 6 years of my life after that. Upon graduation. So I took advantage of that program, and upon graduating from college, I went into the Marine Corps. They offered me a chance to either go ground or air. I figured air would be best. I didn't want to be slogging through mud, so I went air. And
sounds like a good choice to me.
Definitely.
I'd rather do that too.
Plus, the opportunities after that I felt would be better if I was able to become a Marine pilot. Not that I enjoyed flying. I really had no desire to fly airplanes, but this sounded like a better track than the ground forces.
Right.
So I joined the Marine Corps, 18 months of flight training, and they turned me into a helicopter pilot. Mm-hmm. Spent the next 4 years stationed at El Toro in California. And
Vietnam War wasn't happening?
oh, yes, the Vietnam War was happening.
How come you weren't there?
Well, some of us were and some of us weren't.
Okay.
All right. I have to say that near the end of my contracted time in the Corps, with about 3 weeks left before I could either leave or re-up, my entire squadron was sent to Vietnam. Because I had such a short time left, they exempted me from that trip to Vietnam. Mm-hmm. Kind of bittersweet. My crew chief, Sergeant Womack, who I'd grown to know and like and love as a brother, was one of the first ones killed when the squadron went over there, as were a number of my friends. But that was the end of my Marine career, though. I spent the 6 years I'd given them and went straight to Hollywood, hoping to start a show business career.
All right. You had the wide eyes for the big prize, huh?
That's right. That's right. Jumped in like almost hundreds or thousands of would-be actors did. Did as many commercials as I could. I did a few short films, small roles in smaller films, and then I was cast in a show called The Fantastics, wonderful show at the Hollywood Center Theater. Small theater, the pay wasn't great, but it was a showcase, and I was able to bring agents, friends, family down, and it looked like it was going to be a fairly long run. The show was very successful. While I was doing that show, I happened to be reading the trade papers, Variety, as a matter of fact, in Hollywood, which everybody read.
Yeah.
And I happened to see an ad from a hotel in Las Vegas, the Dunes Hotel. Now, this was back in like 1966. And Vegas was a very small town, but well-known. And they had a number of big hotels. And the Dunes was advertising for a male dancer that was 6 feet tall. And I thought, I've never been to Las Vegas. I'd love to see it. So I gave them a call. They told me that if I could get out there, they would pick me up at the airport and take me back. And I could audition for their line captain and that show, the Casino de Paris at the Dunes Hotel. It was very exciting. I had really no aspirations as to whether I would have a real chance of being chosen. I had never worked professionally as a dancer. I'd been taking jazz class for probably 2, 3, 4 years. And I just thought, this is going to be a great way to see Vegas. Mm-hmm. So I flew up. They picked me up at the airport, drove me back to the hotel, changed clothes, got on stage, went into the showroom. There was just the dance captain and a recorder with show's music on it. We spent about 40 minutes to an hour doing 4 or 5 numbers to different tunes, different show tunes.
Just by yourself?
By myself and the dance captain, who was showing me some choreography. Okay. Not the specific numbers, but just basic choreography, knee slides, turns, rhythm dancing, stuff like that. I had no idea if I was impressing them or not. I certainly didn't think that I would be, since this was really high end. It was over with. We got back in the car. They drove me back to the airport. Didn't say thank you. Didn't say sorry. Just opened the door. I got out, and off the car went. And I thought, well, I've been to so many auditions that I knew I really didn't have a shot here, but it didn't surprise me. I wasn't disappointed. I had flown to Vegas, had lunch at the hotel, got to dance for a dance captain, and was on my way back to the Fantastics. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. 3 days later, the phone rang. Duke, you're hired. Can you be here in 3 days? I was dumbfounded.
Wow.
I mean, what? I thought, what? You're hiring me? Duke, can you be here in 3 days? I said, sure, I'll be there in 3 days. Well, at the time, I was married. I had a young son. I believe he was 2 years old. And we were all thrilled. So I decided to go up to Las Vegas, whatever it took, however long the audition time was or the rehearsal time was for me to get into a show that was already going. My first wife and my son stayed in Los Angeles until I either made it or didn't. And so we we got up there and we started rehearsing right away. The show was hard. It was something I enjoyed. It was like a challenge. And I did everything I thought was possible to make sure that they felt I would be an asset to the show. Mm-hmm. Rehearsal lasted almost 2.5 to 3 weeks, and it was every day.
Were you replacing somebody that was leaving the show? Is that
somebody had left the show. The show originally had 8 male dancers, 30 showgirls. They were all beautiful and gorgeous, some specialty dancers, a couple of singers. And they were replacing a male dancer who had left for a family problem, and he'd been gone for 3 months. And I later learned, because I was dumbfounded as the fact they would just hire me with almost no experience. But I found out later from the choreographer, Ron Lewis, one of the best, that the replacement that I was taking over had been gone for 3 months. And that put a real strain on the other 7 guys left. Mm-hmm. There was no swing dancer to give them any rest.
Oh, I see.
So they were getting a little desperate.
Kind of like in a sports, you have guys on the bench, and then you have the 8 guys, or not, what was it? 9 guys that are supposed to be in the show. 8. They don't all dance all at the same time. There's some that are sitting out for some of the numbers.
Well, some of the numbers, right?
Yeah. So
some
they get
swing,
a little rest.
Some switch.
Yeah.
But the full component was 8 dancers, and they had been working with 7 for 3 months. So they were a little desperate. But the producer of the show, Frederick Apcar, he was adamant about how tall the boys were, how tall the girls were, what they weighed. It was almost an obsession with him. And he wanted all the boys to be 6 feet tall. So they all looked exactly the same in all their costumes, same height on stage. It was a good look to the show.
Yeah. No, it was a fantastic
there weren't
show.
Too many dancers that were 6 feet tall that could dance, and certainly not a whole lot of them that were 6 feet tall that thought they could dance,
right?
Like I did. What a learning experience. Some of the best choreography in the country, and in 3 weeks I had mastered most of it. How well, I really wasn't sure, but I did know that the guys I was working with had been dancers for years, and they were all very, very good. So I felt very privileged to be involved. I was just a little apprehensive as to what Frederick Apcar would think once we opened with me in these numbers. Mm-hmm. But after 3 weeks, that was over quickly. And an odd thing happened. I went into the show the first night, and you must realize that when you're rehearsing numbers, all the cast comes in by number. In other words, I would rehearse with the girls for maybe an hour and a half on 2 numbers, and then some of the guys would come in, and then guys and girls would come in, so that I was able to work myself into every single number. So I worked all day long while they came in shifts.
Right.
And
so you were really getting beat up, huh?
Yeah.
This dancing's not easy. Not that kind. That's very
but
difficult.
it was physically demanding, and I loved it, especially being in this atmosphere with total professionals on a very high level. The Dunes Hotel. I mean, come on, we're on the Strip, and so this strange thing happened opening night. you've got to remember when all the girls came in, of course, they didn't have any makeup on, of course. They weren't in costume. They were in rehearsal clothes. And I got to know most of them, talked to them all. I would be rehearsing numbers, and I was supposed to go over here to Mary, and she was going to take me up the stairs, and I'd come down with Jan and go over to this group, and I felt I had everything down pat. Here comes opening night. I'm jazzed. I'm excited. I'm nervous. I want to do everything correctly. I'd worked very hard and thought I was rock solid. First number is most of the cast, and we're on a flying staircase, and there's a lot of going up and down the stairs to different parts of the cast, mostly the showgirls. The guys danced around the showgirls.
Right, right.
Opening number starts. I'm on the staircase. I'm looking for Mary Ann. All of a sudden, it dawns on me as the orchestra is playing the opening number. Every showgirl has the exact same costume on and the exact same makeup on.
Oh, yeah, they look like robots almost. They're all the same. Exactly the same.
They were all the same height. I couldn't tell one showgirl from another. All of a sudden, and they obviously understood that immediately. I could hear, Duke, over here. Duke, over here. Come on down. That's it. I mean, they were whispering and shouting as low as they could, and they got me through the first night. I was petrified. I didn't know who these girls were or where I was supposed to go. But they got me through, and it worked out fine. Now, at that time, there was no union at all, and we worked 2 shows a night, an 8 o'clock show, which lasted about an hour and 40 minutes, and then a midnight show, which lasted the same time. We did 2 shows a night every week, 52 weeks a year.
No breaks.
There was no break, no day off. On Saturday, we did 3 shows. We did a late show at 1:45.
No matinee.
No matinee. No.
Oh,
8 p.m., midnight, and on Saturday, 1:45 a.m.
So really, between the midnight show and the 1:45, there was no break even.
No.
You
we had
got
about
off
a
the end of the
15-minute
show
break,
and then you
boom,
started
done,
another one.
Back on stage.
Oh, my God.
The late show was a little bit shorter. They eliminated a couple of not complete numbers, but partial numbers, so we could get out of there a little quicker. But again, with no union, I signed a year's contract, and I was there for 365 days every night. It was crazy.
Sick or not sick, injured or not injured.
Well, and that's why I noticed right away, everybody in the show, especially the dancers, they kept themselves in tremendous shape. A lot of exercising, a lot of vitamins, very conscious about not getting injured.
Yeah.
Once you get injured, it's real hard to heal if you're working every night.
Yeah, you got no rest.
No, none. So that made it very interesting. But after the first night, I remember Frederick Apgar came in 3 nights later and sat in his seat in the front. And that, of course, made everybody a little nervous. But he sat there with his group. I did the first show, 8 o'clock. After the show's over, we're back in the dressing room getting some makeup and some rest. We would go out to the coffee shop in the casino and we'd eat between shows, most of us. Some would go home and then come back at 11:30 for the midnight show.
Right.
So I'm in the dressing room right after the first show, and in walks Frederick Apgar. Now, I hadn't been in the show long, but I heard people say that he very rarely came backstage. Here he comes walking into the boys' dressing room and heads right to my table. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Am I on my way back to L.A.?
Yeah, this could be bad or good.
He walks over and he says, Duke, nice job. He said, I could see your smile from the back row. Turned around and walked out. Well, later on, I talked to the choreographer, and he was laughing, and he said, Duke, he said, you're a good dancer. He said, probably not as good as anybody else in the show. But he said, you had a smile that we could see in the back row, and Frederick is real big on selling your number.
Mm-hmm.
And I did have that ability, always did. And it just worked here. It worked well. I was thrilled.
Now, at this point, did you do any singing in the show, or was it just dancing?
No, just dancing.
Mm-hmm.
There were 2 or 3 spots. They had a lounge show that was a really good lounge show with a lead singer in it. And once Frederick knew that I could sing, I was made an understudy for 2 or 3 people.
Oh, okay.
Many times the lead singer in the lounge show would need a day off.
That's a completely different show. That's
completely
a separate
different
show and a different stage, everything, yeah.
Different times. There was a time when I did his spot for a week and a half. I did the lounge show, then came in and did the main show. Then went out and did the lounge show 2 more times.
Oh, wow. Good. Well, it's nice to be young, isn't it? Because you can do all that stuff when you're young. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a good time. It was exciting, very exciting.
Oh, how could you go wrong? You're with, 30 beautiful women on stage and backstage every night. Yeah, although you were married, but... Well,
but that's, that's
it's still nice to look at, right?
One thing no one ever saw coming. My first wife, which is the one that finally moved up to Las Vegas so we could enjoy life while I was performing on stage. I don't think either one of us realized what we were getting ourselves into. Every single night in that show, 32 showgirls, every single night, all gorgeous. And most of my life, or the people in the show, their life revolved around the show. I mean, they had birthday parties between shows, and they had things happening after the last show. A number of us were married, but it was very difficult after a couple of years for my wife. She was home all alone every night.
Yeah.
Trying to raise a young son. And as I guess happens, eventually it became too much. And that show cost me my marriage, my first marriage.
Mm-hmm.
But
typical thing in show business, though.
Well,
I'm on the different end of it in the music business, and I work with a lot of what people think are roadies. We're the crew people, and a lot of us and musicians too. We go on the road, and a lot of marriages can't handle that. A lot of the wives can't handle their husband being away all the time. They want the stability. They want
Sure.
them home. And if you're successful, you're gone a lot. And a lot of marriages break up over that. Very
well. It
common.
was very difficult, and it was something that I don't think we could have ever forecast or seen coming. Something totally different as far as a work environment in show business. Every single night in that environment, it was exciting. It was wonderful. But the one regret I have is that it did cost me that first marriage.
Mm-hmm. But that opened up other opportunities
Oh,
later.
It certainly did. Yes, it did. As most tragedies do.
Yeah.
Certainly did.
Yeah. So that was now. So how long did you stay with that show?
I stayed with that show for 6 years, and then I auditioned for a singing job in the Stardust show. I got that job. I got very excited singing in the Stardust show, but I had such an appetite for performing that I had an opportunity to star in a show in Hollywood. I wish I could remember the name of that show. It was a musical, and they offered me a starring role, and I thought that I could do it, if I took some time off from the Stardust show. And they gave me a month off. And I went down there to audition and to rehearse if I got the job. And unfortunately, when I decided I would probably not come back to Hollywood, I would go back to the Stardust, someone had seen a review of that show, which eventually closed. And when I got back to the Stardust, I didn't have a job anymore.
Oh, one of those. Yeah,
it was one of those. Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah,
what was I thinking? So that set me right out. I had met a couple of people in Las Vegas. I had a number of connections. The town was small, run by the mob, and they told me I had a friend who knew a pit boss at the Caesar's Palace. And he told me, Duke, if you learn to deal craps, I can give you a job here at Caesar's Palace dealing craps. And when he told me what a dealer made back then, I was floored.
So it was more than you were making as an entertainer?
3 times as much as I was making as an entertainer.
Wow.
Who would have ever thought? I mean...
No, I didn't know that, yeah.
Dealers on the game? Are you kidding? It was all tips. I mean, it was thousands of dollars. So I took an inventory of where I was, and I thought, I'm going to give this a shot. I like Las Vegas. I'm going to give this a shot. Went downtown, learned to deal craps. That's another story. And when I went back, finally, after almost 9 months, I went back to Caesar's Palace. And lo and behold, there were no openings, this friend told me. There were no openings right now. What? I just spent 9 months learning to deal craps downtown for like pennies, and you're telling me there's no openings now? Well, that's what he said. So I went to all the big hotels asking if anybody there needed a crap dealer, not telling them that I had just learned to deal the game. I went into the Hilton Hotel, and the casino manager there was Jimmy Newman. And I just went in there to ask him about, are there any openings here? And noticed a picture on the wall. He was a Marine Corps pilot. We got to talking, and we hit it off wonderfully. And he said, Duke, you want a job here? I'll start you tomorrow. What?
Wow.
Whoa! I guess back then they had such transients that was almost the way it was. There were certainly job openings if someone with any juice at all, wanted to put somebody in. And to make a long story short, I started dealing craps at the Hilton. I also had learned to deal Baccarat on the side. And
how did you learn that?
I just learned
That's a specialty. That's not your normal game that people know.
No. But downtown, the Las Vegas Club offered not only craps, but if you wanted to learn another game like blackjack.
Now, when you say you went downtown to learn, were you going to a school or were you actually working in a casino? Dealing?
No. What happened was there was a club down there named the Las Vegas Club, which has just been bought today and leveled for a brand new building called Circa that's going to be built on that site. It's going to be a spectacular hotel here in town. But I went down to the Las Vegas Club, and they were offering lessons in gaming if you signed a 1-year contract. In other words, they didn't want to teach you how to deal a game and then have you
leave
and
go
off and go to a better job somewhere.
Right.
And that had happened enough so that they would teach you the game for free. Well, for free. I mean, the tips there were almost nothing. I was making maybe $25 a day. And they would do that if I signed a year's contract. I worked there for probably the 9 months. And when I went to Caesars to see if there were any openings, and there weren't, I went across the street from the Las Vegas Club to the Union Plaza. I happened to have a friend that knew Bill Boyd, who owned that hotel. And I asked him if there were any openings there, and he said that there were. And if I wanted to start, I could start. I went back to Mel Exper at the Las Vegas Club to tell him that I was going to leave. And he said, "You have a contract." He said, "You have a contract. If you leave, I'll make sure you never work in this town again." Well, I looked at the contract, and I thought, it doesn't say anything about if I continue to work at the Las Vegas Club, can I work somewhere else at the same time? So I went to one of those upstairs lawyers downtown because I had no clue. He looked over the contract and he said, "Duke," he said, "as long as you stay working at the Las Vegas Club, you're fine. Nobody can fire you." I said, "Okay, thank you." I went back to the Las Vegas Club, and for the next probably 2 weeks, every time I had a break on one of my games, I was dealing craps, Mel Exper came over and said, "Duke, you can't do this," because I had already started dealing at the Union Plaza on graveyard shift. I was working the Las Vegas Club on swing shift, which was 8 to 4 in the morning. When I got off work, I walked across the street and started graveyard shift from 4 to 12 at the Union Plaza. I just changed aprons, changed ties, and kept dealing. So I was working 2 dealing jobs.
Wow. You were getting no sleep.
None.
Yeah.
But I was making better money.
Uh-huh.
And I was going to get out of that contract. I mean, I wasn't going to get out of the contract, but I only had 3 months left on that contract.
Right.
So, but he tried to talk me into not doing that. He said, "Duke, other dealers will try and do that, and it'll be impossible to control them." I said, "Mel, I will never be late. I will never be sick. I will be here every single night dealing craps at the Las Vegas Club for the remainder of my contract." When the contract was about to be up at the end of that year, he fired me. So he wouldn't have to pay me my severance pay and my vacation pay. Anyway, that's how I got started in gaming.
Mm-hmm.
In gaming.
So that's how you got out of that, and that's how you learned, and then you ended up at the Hilton, you said?
At the Hilton.
Yeah.
And I was dealing Baccarat at the Hilton, too, at that time. I worked my way in. I knew how to deal Baccarat. It was a very coveted job. But I talked to Jimmy Newman and kept asking him if I could go in after I had worked my crap shift, if I could go in and just deal some Baccarat to keep my chops going. You know, I wouldn't be in on the tips. The Baccarat tips were big.
Yeah, that's a high roller game. Yeah.
Back then, not like now. Now the entire hotel splits.
Oh.
All the dealers, 24 hours a day, split.
So you could have the crappiest dealing job, and you're going to make the same as the guy that's dealing Baccarat.
Exactly. But back then, the Baccarat pit went by themselves. The crap dealers went by their own table. Everybody went for themselves.
Okay.
And that made it a really good job.
Yeah.
If you knew how to make money.
Plus, I mean, some guys are more personable than others, so those guys are going to get the bigger tips. The guys that are grumpy are not going to get the big tips, right?
Well, sure. There's a way to work the customer, to be nice, and it worked out much better for those of us who were comfortable working with people.
Mm-hmm.
And strangely enough, when it looked like I wasn't going to be able to move permanently in fact, I did move permanently into the Baccarat pit for 3 months. And then Jimmy Newman came to me and said, "Duke, I've got the nephew of one of the county commissioners wants a Baccarat job. I'm going to have to move you back into the crap pit." And, of course, that's the way, juice worked back then.
Yeah, right.
I was a little ticked, but, hey, what could I do? He had been very good to me. So I went back into the crap pit, and then I started looking at Baccarat jobs elsewhere, then something very unusual happened. I got a phone call from Frederick Apcar, the producer of the Dunes Hotel's Casino de Paris show. And this was like 3 years after I had left. He said, Duke, we're doing a Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers number in our new edition. Would you like to come back to the show for that number? I was dumbfounded. You know, this came at a time when I wasn't happy not dealing Baccarat. I was going to go look for another job.
Yeah.
And then here comes this request for a semi-starring position. I mean, it was only one number, but it was a nice option, and I kind of missed show business. Mm-hmm. I mean, I still do. I went over, talked to Frederick. He was thrilled that I could do this, showed me the number. It was the same choreographer, and I signed on for a year's contract.
What about was there a pay differential then, or were you able to make as much?
I was not going to make as much money. Uh-huh. It wasn't a tremendous difference. It wasn't just a boy dancer now, but the pay was less than I was going to make had I stayed and tried to hustle from hotel to hotel in the Baccarat pit. And I thought, this is a good opportunity for me. I'm going to enjoy doing this, and then we'll see what happens.
Right, because a dancer's life is short anyway.
Very short. And so that's one of the reasons that I left in the first place. I didn't want to become one of those 40-year-old dancers that then becomes a makeup assistant or a wardrobe person and then kind of fades into the sunset.
Yeah.
I didn't really plan on staying in that show, for 20 years. But this was an opportunity to go back, and I could hardly resist it. So I signed on. And let me tell you, Ross, it's the best decision I ever made. That's where I met the greatest woman on the face of the earth.
I think I might know her.
Yeah. Your sister, my present wife of 43 years. Wow. Crazy story.
Well, so that was part of the show that Jen was in.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It was just a specialty number, and that's all you had to do was go and do that one?
I did the whole show.
Oh, you did?
Right.
Oh, okay.
And that number.
Oh, okay. So you went back to the whole thing.
It was back on board.
Oh, all right.
Back into show business. Had a great time.
Yeah.
Had a great time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's quite a story. So I didn't know all that, and that's pretty interesting. So when you were in the show originally, Jen was not in it then?
No.
Okay.
She was not. In fact, quite an interesting take for me. When I went back into the show the second time, of course, they held auditions again. They held rehearsals, and we were rehearsing for the new show. So all the dancers would come down every day, and we'd do numbers, and the singers, Jen was one of the lead singers in the show.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes she was the lead singer. She had a great voice, still has a great voice. But she was down with the piano player during one of our rehearsals, one of my first rehearsals. And she's down in the pit with the piano player, and I don't even notice her down there. She's just going over some songs and things. I'm up there learning a new show with the whole cast. And later on, she would tell me, much later on, she would tell me, the piano player was Ronnie Simone, who I got to know well. He played a lot of stuff for her and us. But Ronnie was playing piano for her, and he had been in the show when I was there at the beginning, the first time.
Uh-huh.
He was their piano player. And she's down there with him looking at the dancers on stage rehearsing, and she happened to, I guess, notice me. I don't know. I think I was a little taller than most of them. And she said, "Ronnie, who is that guy up there in the brown pants?" And he said, "Oh, that's Duke. He's been in the show before." She said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, why?" She says, "I'm going to marry him." I didn't even know who she was. She says, "I'm going to marry him." And Ronnie laughed, of course. Years later at our wedding, he kept laughing about that story. But that was kind of cute.
She told the same story in the interview that I did with her yesterday.
You're kidding.
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
That's great.
That's great.
Yeah, it's funny. She said the same thing. So it is a true story. I've got confirmation from both sides.
I'm surprised you let me ramble on.
No, because it's great hearing it from you. I'm hearing the other side.
It was crazy.
And you noticed her. When did you notice her?
It took me a while to notice her. There was another girl singer in the show that is now one of our best friends, Anna Schiavi, and she's a blonde, totally different than Jen.
I know her, and I knew her then too. She was beautiful.
My eyes immediately went to her. However, I never got anything back from her at all. Kind of cold. But it took me probably 3 months to notice Jen. Her voice was immediately spectacular. I mean, I remember standing back in the audience when they were doing a spot. I would come out during her spot and watch her. And the first time I did that, I just couldn't help but scream, "Woo!" like that. I think she heard me. But her voice was spectacular. She just glid across the stage. And I became very attracted to her. Strangely enough, we started going out, and then I eventually moved in with her. She had a house here in town. About 6 months later, I left my apartment, moved in with her, and lo and behold, I had a 10-year-old son who my ex-wife up north couldn't handle or didn't want to handle, and sent him down to me. And he had been living with me in my apartment. And Jen just opened her house up, fixed up a back room for him, and took in my 10-year-old son, too. And that lasted for probably 3 years. Now, here's the amazing part of this story. Imagine yourself in my position. Now, we had a great time. I think we were in love. I don't know how much in love I was with Jen, but she was wonderful. She was a phenomenal cook. She was wonderful in the bedroom. She was spectacular looking, had a gorgeous voice, and it took me almost 2.5 years to realize that while we were in that house for 2.5 years, she never uttered the word marriage once. She was that smart. Not once. When I realized that, I thought, what is wrong with me? Am I out of my mind? I love this woman. She has not mentioned the word marriage once. Went out, got a ring, put her in my car, drove her on a date, said, look in the glove compartment. And there was a ring, an engagement ring. I said, will you marry me? And I'm telling you, it's the best thing I ever did.
Were you driving when you asked her?
Yep. It was spectacular. It was something I'll never forget, and I know she won't either. It was meant to be.
Yeah.
Compatible as hell. A lot in common. We have our differences, but it's been a phenomenal 43 years.
Great story. Great story.
Crazy.
So now I'm going to shift you over to the part of show business that you're in right now, which is very, very unusual. We're going to talk about that. But before we move on to that, I want to ask you one thing that you shared with me that I want you to that has not been in this interview yet is back in the Marines.
Yes.
When you were in the Marines, you were a helicopter pilot, and you were, at the same time, you were taking dance lessons.
You noticed that.
You were taking dance lessons while you were a Marine Corps pilot.
Yes, I was stationed at El Toro, and twice a week, after we got off work, I'd jump in my car, make the half-an-hour drive to Hollywood, the American School of Dance, and take a hard jazz class from Carlton Johnson. And
this was a secret, and the other Marines did not know this.
Oh, of course not.
And eventually, they found out about it. And tell me what happened then.
I thought we were going to leave this out of the conversation, but no. This
I
is
can
great.
cut it out later if you really
This
want
is
me
great.
to.
No way.
I love the story, though.
No,
It's great.
this is great. One morning, my co-pilot and I go out to the flight line. We're going to do a little training off the beach. He gets into the cockpit on my starboard side, and I climb up and climb into the cockpit. And as I sit into my seat, draped over my joystick are a pair of black lace women's panties. I said, "What are these doing here?" He said, "Well, the guys weren't sure if you'd like to put them on or not." I said, "What?" "I hear you're dancing, Duke." I said, "Yeah, I'm dancing. I'm dancing hard, tough jazz." I said, "Enough of that stuff. Take these back where you got them or use them yourself. I don't care." So
That's a great story.
And then, of course, it was everybody's joke. I was on the El Toro basketball team, the Marine Corps basketball team. I'd played basketball in college.
Uh-huh.
So I was a player coach for that team. And we took the state championship as far as the Marine Corps went with that team.
So much for the panties.
So much for the panties, and I kept reminding them of that fact.
That's great. Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to make sure we got that in because I love that story. All right. So now.
Nice.
So you guys have been married a long time. Your life is not over in show business now. Even when it did end as a dancer, singer, and all that. But you and Jen started a business that's carried you through to today, which is it is a show business. It's just very unusual. You want to tell us about that? How that started and where it is now?
Well, you must be talking about Freakling Brothers Haunted Houses.
I am.
What a story. Very proud of it. Something that we never really saw expanding to the level that it has. When we were both in the show, like I said, we worked every single night. 7 nights a week, 52 weeks a year. Every year. Finally, the union came in. And the union negotiated the performers to get 3 days in a row off every month.
Oh.
And that was like gold for us. And wouldn't you know it, one of my favorite holidays has always been Halloween. Back when I was in college, I would do extensive makeup before we went to Halloween parties. And I always spent too much time on the makeup. And my wife's biggest complaint was, at that time, my first wife, was that we were never ready for the party. We always got there at the end of the party because I had to put on my damn makeup. But I loved Halloween. So, wouldn't you know, the first 3 days we had off, both of us, was Halloween weekend. And I'm sitting at home thinking, are you kidding me? We're going to have Halloween off. We got to do something. And I thought, we got to scare the kids, and I'm going to do it with traditional monsters. I didn't want them to celebrate Freddy and Jason. I wanted to give them a taste of Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy. So I made a coffin. This is Halloween Day. Made a coffin, jumped in it. Jeannie got dressed up like the Bride of Frankenstein. I had a stake sticking out of my chest, and I put the candy on my chest. And the idea was we'd open the door, she would open the door for the kids, and she'd let each group in, and they would have to overcome their fear to get the candy. We just didn't give them candy. So she'd open the door and tell them where the candy was. And then it was amazing watching which kids had enough courage to walk over and actually reach into the coffin and grab some candy. And we were open every Halloween from 6 p.m. until 9, so it was 3 hours. We prepared the room, the scene, and we were there for 3 hours a night. One night, Halloween night. And that first group, it was a lot of fun. They came in, some of them would try, some of them wouldn't, but I laid there still as ever. And then near the end of that night, there was a group of like 3 high school kids, 2 guys and a girl, and they were kind of standing behind the smaller group near the end of the night, and one of them was throwing pebbles from the front porch, trying to throw a pebble into the coffin, little pebbles, you know. Mm-hmm. I had about 2 or 3 of them come in, and I thought, what do you think you're doing? Finally, it was their turn. They were the last ones there. And they came in, and they walked over to the coffin. I hadn't moved a muscle. And they started grabbing handfuls and sticking it in their bag, and that really ticked me off, right? So I let them keep grabbing, and then I reached up and grabbed the guy's arm and jumped out of the coffin. These 3 people screamed bloody murder.
Did they think that you were fake?
They must have.
Yeah.
They dropped everything they had, turned around, ran out of the house, and that was it. I didn't see them again. That was the end of it. And we started laughing. And I thought, you know, this is really cool. And every year I would do a character, set up the candy somewhere. I did Frankenstein once in a chair and put the candy between his legs. Every character had a scene in our entry hall. And it got to where the town was much smaller then. The RJ came out, the Review Journal, the newspaper, the local newspaper came out and did a story on us the 3rd year we were doing this. And they put our address in the paper, of course. It didn't dawn on me, but it was a front page story of what we had done the year before. And the 3rd year, we had hundreds of people coming from all over town to line up or to park their RVs across the street, spread lawn chairs out, and watch me chase people down the block. It got to the point where I wouldn't just jump out of the coffin because we had older people coming now. I mean, not older people, but I mean, there were parents
Adults
bringing their kids.
All right. Uh-huh.
And the parents would take them in. And when I came out of the area, the parents would start screaming and run away. And there were some wild stories. But they would watch me chase people down the street. And that went on. The first year was 1976. And that went on for almost 20 years, probably.
Just doing it out of your house?
16 years out of my house.
Oh, wow.
And it became an institution, though, here in town. It was the house on Rochelle Avenue. And it was crazy. At first, the neighbors were just horrified because they had so many people going to their house for trick-or-treats after they came to ours. I had to calm them down. But then they got into it. They enjoyed it. And it became a neighborhood thing. So it was an awful lot of fun. By that time, when we finally sold the house and we had to move, we did Halloween for the last time at that house. And we made up scrolls thanking people for coming. We always had a great vibe from all the people that did come. I can't tell you how many people left messages, left letters, left cards saying, Duke, can you please do this again somewhere? 2 or 3 of those cards said, why aren't you doing this professionally as a commercial haunt? And I thought, wow, that's crazy, a commercial haunt. Never thought about that. I don't know if I could do that. Now, I was buying costumes. You know, when we first started in 76, there was no store you could buy anything at. Now you can buy everything anywhere. Animatronics, costumes, exploding pumpkins. You want it, they've got it.
Yeah.
I had to make everything. We had to make all of our own stuff. But I used to buy costumes from Williams Costumes. And the lady that was running Williams Costumes, she just passed away, and I don't think they're in business now. But back then, I would go in to buy costumes, and I remember in the late 80s, she said, Duke, you got to go to Arizona. You got to go to Arizona and see what they've got down there. I said, what do you mean, what they've got? They've got a haunted house down there, a freestanding haunted house at the Los Arcos Mall. Huh. I thought, well, okay. I got in a plane. This was like sometime in September. Got in a plane, flew out to the Los Arcos Mall, got in a cab, drove to the mall. And as I drive up in the parking lot, I see a 2-story Victorian mansion sitting in the parking lot with a line of people all the way around it. This was in second week of October. A line of people all the way around it. I get in line, buy a $5 ticket. I get in line, I stand in line for maybe 20 minutes, and I go into this, what looked like a Victorian mansion. It was a clear span hawker tent. Now, a clear span hawker tent is a tent that's made of aluminum that has no tent poles. It has rails, A-shaped rails. And you can slide canvas down those rails and then paint the canvas on the outside to look like anything.
Right.
Well, it looked like a real Victorian mansion. I go inside, it was rows and rows of Visqueen with a couple of actors jumping out, going boo as you walk by. And I went through the whole thing, took maybe 15 minutes with a lot of other people. I get to the end, and I'm talking to the stage manager. Happened to mention I was from Vegas, and he was really excited about that. And we started talking about this clear span hawker tent. And I'm asking him, how long does this go? He says, this will go all month. He said, I said, well, how expensive was this to buy this tent? They're expensive. He said it cost him probably $200,000. $200,000.
And back
the
then,
first year.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? So I said, my God, how many years does it take you to make your money back? He said, we'll have it made back by the end of the month. They put through 50,000 people at $5 a head. Now, in all the years I've been doing business, we've never gotten close to that, those numbers. But that was phenomenal. They were the only attraction in town, and they pulled from the Phoenix, Arizona area, which had a lot of people.
Yeah.
Over 1 million. It was crazy. I'll tell you, Ross, I don't remember anything until I was on the plane flying back to Las Vegas. My mind was going a mile a minute. Number one, I thought I could build something a lot scarier than what they had. It was Visqueen with actors just going boo, There wasn't any real creativity. And I knew for sure I could build something that wouldn't cost $200,000 if I had to build it out of plywood. And that's what we did. When I got home, I called my son in Los Angeles, and I couldn't wait to take him out the following year. And we flew out there the following year to take a look at the same attraction. And we were shaking our heads, thinking, we can do this. I know we can do this. So his best friend, Craig Lewis, and my oldest boy, Daniel, we started designing what we thought would be an attraction close to what their attraction was square footage-wise. We stepped it off. And it took 248 4x8 plywood flats to build what we wanted. It was a huge square with pathways in the middle going all the way through it, with circus tents on the outside. We painted all the plywood pink and black striping. We were going to call it the Circus of Horrors. And we built the whole thing in Los Angeles. They did. And then once they got it done, we went down there with trucks. We loaded all the plywood flats on the trucks and drove them up here. We found a place, a parking lot, that rented us the space to put this up. And it took us almost 3.5 weeks to get it up and ready for operation.
Including all the interior design and...
Right.
Yeah.
It took us almost 3.5 weeks to set up all the plywood flats, bolt them all together. They were all numbered, and then put the sets in to all the places where the people would walk. And then we had to hire some actors. The place we went, I thought was ingenious. We went to high schools, to the advanced classes. And the advanced classes, those students had to do a project that year that involved a charity. Well, when we opened, we were going to give a large percentage of our profit to muscular dystrophy here in town. So we could use these students as our actors because it was going to be their project. So we used a number of students as our actors. And there was really no pay involved. It was all volunteers. Mm-hmm. And we opened that first year, 1992, on Sahara Decatur. And we had a line of people, half a block long, almost the entire month. We were the first freestanding haunt in Las Vegas. It was crazy.
Did you make a profit?
Yes, we did.
That's good.
Yes, we did. It wasn't a large profit. I think we only did 13,000 people, only. But we charged $5 a head. We paid for everything. It was a lot of work. We were out there doing everything ourselves, 3 of us. We did that for 3 years, up and down. Taking the entire attraction down was a nightmare. We had to load all that stuff on trucks, take it all to a warehouse, offload all of it to store it, and then repeat the process when we wanted to set up again.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of work.
I'm telling you, Ross, it was crazy. It was crazy. And I remember the moment that everything changed for us. It was 3 years later. It was the end of '94. This was our 3rd year, and we were beat. Like I said, there were only 3 of us. Every once in a while, we could grab a friend to help us to make it a 4-man crew. But I remember sitting in a parking lot on Decatur and Sahara, looking across the street at Montgomery Wards at that time. And we were beat. We had just loaded everything onto trucks and hadn't driven off yet. 3 of us. And we see a moving van come into Montgomery Ward's parking lot. The back door comes open. A guy comes around with a dolly, and the driver gets out with a dolly, and they start moving furniture out of that van into Montgomery Ward's. And we're kind of looking across the street, and still looking, and without saying a word alone, we all turned to each other and said, "Can we put people in that van?" I don't know. Can we put people in that van and scare them? I don't know. And the idea, it was like a light bulb went off for us. All of a sudden, we're measuring the van. It's 8 feet wide by 40 feet long. I'm thinking, and then, of course, we started talking, day after day after day for like a week or 2. Drawing stuff out, looking at stuff. Are people going to feel, if they're going down a trailer, are they going to feel like, well, we have to have more than one trailer? We're going to have more than one. We're going to have to connect them. Well, what if people go down one? They're going to feel like they're walking in a hallway. And I said, wait a minute. You take an area 8 feet by 12. That's the size of a small bedroom in a tract home. Mm-hmm. I'll bet we can we can put 3 of those rooms into one of these trailers, and people will think they're in rooms, separate rooms. And if we move them from one room to the next with a Z-maze or a U-turn switchback, they'll have no idea they're going in a straight line. They'll think they're going from room to room.
Yeah.
And to make a long story short, when we did that, we put 6 trailers together, opened up the first show in '95. People were lined up alongside the outside of the trailer because we cut an entrance door into one trailer and then passageways through the next 6 to an exit door on trailer 6 in a U shape. people would line up. They'd stand in front of those trailers, which we painted to look like buildings. One was a castle. They would go through the entire attraction and come out. And I would start asking them questions. Nobody for the entire year, the entire month, knew they were in trailers. They thought they were in a huge building. It was nuts. We actually revolutionized the industry.
I know nowadays you have like 3 different attractions, but was that one attraction that was one haunted house? It wasn't 3 like you have now.
No, that was one haunted house comprised of six
trailers,
interconnected trailers.
Oh, okay. Wow. I didn't realize
they
it was
felt
that
like
big,
they were walking through a huge building, and it was trailers. And the beauty of it was we could build the sets in, movie quality sets, and never have to tear them down.
Right, yeah, it's
we
all
had
done.
all the sound wired and the lights wired. We just had to unplug them on the cords that went from trailer to trailer. But as far as resetting them on the inside, didn't need to do it. All we had to do was roll the doors down and remove the trailer. Roll the doors down, remove the trailer. So what happened was, instead of taking 3.5 weeks to set a show up and 2 weeks to tear it down when it was wood, with a crew of 6 men, I can take one of these 6-trailered shows and have it up and operational in 5 days. Mm-hmm. And I can have it down, closed up, and off the lot in 6 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, that's a big difference. Yeah.
Well, think of the rental time I save by not having to stay on that lot for another month.
Yeah.
3 weeks at the start and 2 weeks at the end.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And one of the advantages to doing a haunted house in trailers of that size is something we never thought about till we actually had it happening and we were walking through it following people. Because of the 8-foot width, and the thing is only 8.5 feet high, when people are inside, they are forced into a claustrophobic situation. Mm-hmm. You don't walk into a big room and have somebody scare you and you can run away from them. You're stuck. You're stuck in there. I can put an actor in a place you never think he's coming from and are looking at something else, and all of a sudden he's in your face. And you're done. Ross, it is crazy. I could talk for 3 days about this, but I will say we actually revolutionized the industry. But for us, a mom and pop operation, which we still are, we had USA Today rank us as number 1 on a list of top 10 scariest haunted attractions in the country. Top Haunts came out 4 years ago when we opened the R-rated haunt, and ranked us as one of the top 5 scariest haunted attractions in the world. I can't believe I'm even saying that.
I can. I've been through it.
We're still a
scary.
mom and pop operation. My wife sits in the ticket booth all night long selling tickets.
Yeah.
My oldest boy manages one show. I have 2 other managers. And it's just a passion that we've been so lucky and fortunate to enjoy and to succeed at. And it turns me on every time I wake up in October and can't wait to get out to the site.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fantastic. Now I know now you have 3 haunted houses in. When you open it up, there's 3 separate haunted houses in the one area. Are each one of those 6 trailers?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Actually, when we first opened, like I said, we did the first haunted trailer haunt in '95, Castle Vampire. It was so successful that we then built a second one in '96, and that was the Black Box. Interesting story about the Black Box, though. We painted it totally black and just had the words Black Box on the front. And we set the whole thing up in the Montgomery Ward parking lot. And as on opening night, I was a little late getting there, so I didn't get there until the sun had gone down. We opened at 7 p.m. And as I'm driving down Decatur, now I'm the owner. I built this thing. I set it up. As I'm driving down Decatur, I went right past the black box. It was pitch black at nighttime. You couldn't even see it from the street unless you were looking right at it. I thought, what a mistake that was.
Really?
So the next year we put big white skulls on top of it. We had a flaming candle. We actually made it visible. But it was very successful. We had 2 shows at that time, one across the street from the other. Then we added a 3rd show. And when we added the 3rd show, we had 3 separate locations in town. One at Sunset Station in the Southwest, one in North Las Vegas, and one at the Rainbow Promenade right off the 215 in Flamingo. What I would do was I would rotate the shows between those 3 locations so that every year there was a different show for the people.
Oh, okay.
And that worked out. Then there were some problems with Sunset Station not being able to sign our contract early enough. They were going to file bankruptcy. And the one show I had in North Las Vegas didn't really turn a profit for the last 2 years before I decided to look for a location to put all 3 attractions in.
Right. And then you have one ticket seller, which is better too.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
It was, and it saved me. You know, when we had 3 locations, I had to drive around and check on all of them at least twice a night.
Yeah.
And that was a big job for me. And then getting all the ticket sellers, on the same page. What happened with 3, when we had 3 in different locations, people would come, they would buy their ticket. They'd spend 15 minutes in line, 15 minutes going through the attraction, and then they'd go on to their evening. Now, we had a ticket that was called a Freak Pass. It had a big discount, and it was for all 3 attractions. But you would have to drive then to all 3 to buy that ticket.
Right.
And use it. When we went to having a place for all 3, and I was able to shoehorn all 3 into one location at the Rainbow Promenade, people made our attraction their evening. They weren't going anywhere else.
Yeah,
they
right.
came out, and we have food trucks. They came out. They spent a good portion of the evening, 2.5 hours there, going to all 3 attractions. And that Freak Pass became a huge seller.
Yeah.
Because they were all in one location.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. So now, where will it be this next October in 2019?
Well, in 2019, we have a choice of 3 potential sites. We haven't started negotiating yet, but we had been on our old location at the Grand Canyon Shopping Mall on the 215 in West Flamingo for 5 years. But as people living in Vegas will know, vacant land has gone sky high. People are building everything now. The Raiders are coming to town. Buildings are opening. Land is being sold. And they're building condos on the land we once used for 5 years. Mm-hmm. We were able to get an extension on that building last year to open, but they're starting construction on it now. So we're in the process of locating a new spot.
I see. Okay. So, and again, let's talk about, this is a pretty interesting story. I'm hoping this will bring you some business. Let's talk about how people will find out, because we don't know the location yet. It's the Freakling Brothers, and you have a website?
Yes, it's Freakling Bros, FREAKLINGBROS.com.
Okay.
All right.
And they can go there and they can see, where it's going to be. And
if they go to freaklingbros.com, they'll get, it's a wonderful website. They'll get a history of the company. They'll get photographs of what we've done. They'll get a calendar of where we are and what times we're open. We're only open the month of October, depending on what day Halloween falls on. And that's a big factor in our profit margin. 2 things that are uncontrollable: what day Halloween falls on and the weather. If we get rain our final weekend, that really cuts into our profits. And what day Halloween falls on does too. When Halloween falls on a Saturday, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday, it's a good year. Mm-hmm. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, not so good.
Friday, not good, huh?
Well, it's a one day, and then there's no weekend. We tried staying open Saturday.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right. So Halloween's over.
It's like Christmas. Yeah. Once it's over, it's done.
Over. Yeah.
2 years we stayed open when Halloween was on Thursday. We stayed open Friday and Saturday, and the following year when Halloween was on Friday, we stayed open Saturday, and those extra days were stone cold dead.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we were just sitting on our hands.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So to speak.
Yeah.
It's
a fantastic show. I've been to it a few times.
Good.
It's indescribable. You are going to have a great time going through that, and you will be scared. Tell me.
Sure. I also might add, if you want to actually reach us, contact at Freakling Bros is the place to go.
Okay. Now I know one of there's 3 houses. One of them is R-rated.
Yes.
Tell me about the R-ration.
Well, the R-rated haunt was a very interesting experiment. I would like to claim credit for it, but I can't. My very talented son and partner, JT, one of the problems we had when we had 3 haunted attractions, they're very intense, and they really aren't for children. Children under 10 really shouldn't even go in. Mm-hmm. But we had a very hard time keeping people that didn't have families from coming down and then begging us to let their 7-year-old in. Oh, he's tough. He can make it, And, 9 times out of 10, he couldn't even get in the first room. Mm-hmm. So we always had a number of children. And people, when they talk about haunted houses, they always seem to equate it with a children's activity. They had haunted houses in school, and, it's great for the kids, right? We had to fight that. We did our best with the themes that we used. The mortuary, the gates of hell, things like that. But we didn't really have a way to spread that until my son came and said, Dad, you know what we have to do? We've got to create an R-rated haunt. A haunt, not sexually R-rated. When we first decided to do it, I went across the country and visited a number of sexually themed haunted houses. And there was nothing scary about sex. There really isn't. The problem, one of them opened here, and the owner came to me to ask my advice. And I explained to him that what the authorities are going to allow you to do in a sexual haunted house that you're advertising as, being sexual, you're not going to be able to do what the people paying the extra money for are expecting. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. You can't touch girls that have no clothes on. Mm-hmm. And people, when the price is raised because you're going to have nude women in there, they're going to want something to happen. It's not going to happen. And sure enough, he went bankrupt, that year. So we didn't want to go in a sexual way. We wanted to go in an intense R-rated direction, which meant that there's profanity, there are intense graphic situations, things happen to you. We sat down, we spent a long time creating each and every scare in this haunted house. Now, until we opened that haunted house, in Las Vegas, for some reason, haunted houses, the crowd just stopped coming at 12 o'clock. It's like somebody came through and said it's a curfew. They have a huge haunted house convention. It was in Chicago. It's now in St. Louis. I go every other year. One of the questions that I asked the panel when I first went out there, the first year we opened the year before we opened the R-rated haunt was, how can I get people to come after midnight in Las Vegas? I know there must be other haunted houses that are doing business after midnight. And the 4 panelists kind of looked at each other, and then the one looked at me and kind of laughed and said, Duke, you don't want people coming after 12. They're either drunk or they're high, and they cause nothing but problems. Be thankful that there's nobody coming after 12 or very few. I thought, interesting. So we went ahead with the R-rated haunt. Weren't sure if we would eliminate half of our audience. You know, we had a lot of families coming, a lot of young teenagers coming. You had to be 17 or over to go in. You had to sign a waiver that explained many of the things: incidental physical contact, profanity, things will happen to you, claustrophobia.
When you say things will happen to you, like what happens to you? Or
let me give you an example without giving something away. There's a room where you go in, and there's a camp of gorillas, military gorillas, not actual gorillas. They're in there. Before you enter that area, you hear machine gun fire off in the distance. You go in there, and they see you coming in, and they jump up from their campfire. Now, our groups are 5 maximum, so we'll have 4 or 5 in each group. Your group comes into that area. They jump up from their campfire. They all draw guns, revolvers, and they rush over to you. You're in a line, and they force you to go down the path and into a holding cell. They force you by putting a gun to the back of your head. Once your group gets into the holding cell and they lock you in, it's tight. You're facing the other end of the room with bars in front of you, and there is a guy in front of you that's pointing a gun in your face. I don't think there's ever a haunted house where somebody points a gun at you. We do. He points a gun at your face and he says, "Back up against the wall, now." And you do. And then he says, "Stay right there. If you move, it will be worse." And then he walks back, and 3 guys with rifles are facing you. And the one in the middle that had the gun in your face from 25 feet away says, "Ready?" And the guys raise their rifles. He says, "Aim!" And they raise their elbow. Then he says, "Fire!" And I'm not going to tell you what happens next, but something does happen to you. And it is a signature scare that I don't think anybody's ever done until we presented it. That was in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things that happens to you.
Wow. Okay.
There is a first room scare, and first rooms are extremely important in haunted houses. What you want to do in a first room is you want to bring people into an area that doesn't really appear to be frightening. And their guard is let down. And then something happens that they never expect. And it can be anything. It can be another character coming from somewhere, or something else coming from somewhere, or a sound, or a lighting effect, something that they least expect and scares them to death in that room. Now you've set them up for the rest of the haunted house. No matter where they go, they have no idea what's going to happen to them. So they're on edge right from the first room, and that's important. In the gates of hell, in the first room, and you go in, there is a terrible character in a gas mask that comes out. You are facing, in a narrow hallway, you are facing 5 heavy metal doors, like you'd find in a submarine. And he tells you to stand in front of them. And you do. And then all of a sudden, he's able to open all 5 doors at once and tells you to get in right now. You look in, and it's pitch black. You step in, and if not, he will ease you in. And when everybody's in, and it's quick, those doors slam shut and you can't open them. Now you're in an area that's 24 inches by 18 inches, and it's pitch black. And you can't feel anything. And then we start a soundtrack that explains why you are going to die. And it's the devil talking to you. And let me tell you, there is a safe word when you enter. After you sign the waiver, the person sending you up the entrance ramp tells you there is a safe word. If you say the safe word, the actor will escort you out of the attraction. You can't go back in, and there are no refunds. But the safe word is purgatory. Now, we use that word because it's a word you don't commonly hear. You say it, and it's definitely, if you say purgatory, you've said purgatory. And if you say that, the actor will take you right out. And the reason we had a safe word was when we first opened the show the first year, we didn't have a safe word. And I can't tell you how many times people would come to the actor or run out of the first room down the ramp saying, "Get me out of here. I want out of here now." And the actor would take them out. And once he took them out into the compound and then walked them out to the front gate, I can't tell you how many times the group would say, "You know, we didn't really want to come out. We just didn't know what else to say." I mean, they were screaming, "Get me the fuck out of here," like they wanted out. Or maybe one person in the group didn't want to come out, but he took the whole group out. So we sat down and decided we're going to have a safe word. And whoever says that word will be removed from the attraction.
Just that person, not the
Just
whole
that
group.
person.
Right.
And it works perfectly.
Yeah,
it works perfectly.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. What a great thing. What an amazing thing. And it's been going on for now, since you set up the first ones.
This will be our 26th year. This will be our 26th season. The last season was our 26th in trailers. Mm-hmm. Doing home haunts, we started in 1976, but the actual haunted house itself.
Yeah.
26 years.
Great. And you're going to keep doing this until you retire, which is probably never.
No, I'm going to keep doing this until I pass this on to my son at the ripe old age of 90. And then I'll just come down and enjoy everything.
All right.
There's a lot of work that's involved here.
So the son that's working with you now is JT Mollner.
JT.
Who I've also interviewed.
Oh, good.
And he's on our podcast. So if you want to go back and listen to JT's, he's a director and very talented guy. And,
good. I'll take a listen on that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
You should definitely hear that. So anyway, so that kind of wraps up your career in show business, doesn't it?
It does. It's still going, and I love it. Let me add one thing, and I don't hope this doesn't sound egotistical. It's not meant to be, but it's so unique that it's worth saying. When Steve Wynn opened the Mirage, I went over to be one of the Baccarat dealers at the Mirage. So I'm a Baccarat dealer. When he then built the Bellagio, which was 9 years later, he moved the entire Baccarat pit over to the Bellagio. We had so many customers that enjoyed us. So I'm still dealing Baccarat at the Bellagio.
That's right. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that back up again. Yeah.
Steve Wynn was the very best. The hotel was sensational. And the Baccarat pit was always wonderful, very high end. A lot of money being spent there. And a little stuffy in other hotels or most places. But I remember Steve Wynn giving the employees a speech before he opened the Mirage. And I had been in the gaming industry for a while then. People couldn't believe what he was saying. But he said, "I don't care if you guys make a mistake and it costs the hotel $50,000. You have a job here if you do one thing. Entertain the people. Make sure the people are having a good time." And we looked at each other when we walked out of that meeting and said, "Yeah, Rob, who is he kidding?" It used to be where the pit boss, if you had a bad run and somebody was winning a lot of money from you, he'd come over, kick you in the back of the legs, and fire you. There was no job security in this town until Steve Wynn came.
Wow.
None.
But it's
there
gambling,
were so many,
right? I mean, you don't always have control of whether you're winning and losing, right?
Well, you had no control. It's the fact that he felt you were unlucky.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The mob was running this, so you didn't question them.
Right.
And let me tell you, it was easy to walk out of a hotel and go get a job at another one back then. There were more hotels on the Strip, and people were looking for dealers all the time. Mm-hmm. But Steve Wynn brought stability to the game, and it was incredible. And I'll tell you, something odd happened once at the Mirage after about 4 years there. We do a lot of gaming with Chinese, Japanese, Asian players. They're big Baccarat players, and they love it. And in the game of Baccarat, you can either bet the bank hand or the player hand. It's a real simple game, like flipping a coin. But there's a side bet called a tie bet. And if you make that tie bet, you'll get paid 8-1, and both hands have to start with a tie. That's a pair for each hand. You deal 2 cards to each hand. If a tie wins, the Asian players went crazy. They were screaming and hollering like it was lucky, you know. And that was great. And I got caught up in it, and most of us in Baccarat with Steve Wynn were into the players too. You know, we were having a good time. And I remember one evening, I had a huge table, and they hit a tie, and they started screaming. And for some reason, I just let out with a quick little song. All right? Something like, I feel a tie coming on. We did it. Just like that, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, there was a lounge up above the Baccarat pit called the Baccarat Lounge, and Steve Wynn always sat up there. When I got off the game and was walking off for my break, the floor man watching my Baccarat game called me over. And she said, Duke, this is a Baccarat pit. There's no singing in a Baccarat pit. What's the matter with you? And I thought, oh, my God, I got caught up. I explained I got caught up in it. Well, let's not have any more of that. So I went down in my tuxedo and took a break, came back up. I'm walking into the pit to go to my game, and I see this floor person talking to Steve Wynn. And then I see Steve Wynn turn around and leave the Baccarat pit and go back up into the lounge. And I'm thinking, I'm fired. I'm done. Before I could get on the game, the floor person calls me over. Says, Duke, come over here. Steve Wynn heard that song. He saw the people screaming. He said, keep singing as often as you can. What? I can't tell you. Talk about shock. I've never been so shocked in my life. Right now, I've got 15 Baccarat songs. And as far as I know, and as far as the players who keep telling me, I'm the only singing Baccarat dealer in the world. How's that? How can I leave this job? I'm back in show business.
That's
Ross,
fantastic.
It's crazy. It is. It's just crazy.
Well, I know you're beyond retirement age now.
And
you love this. You love this game.
How can you not?
This job. And you could easily retire today and be fine, but you're doing this because you enjoy this, and it is still, for you, it is still show business, isn't it?
It is show business. I mean, and that's probably why it is so much fun, although the Bellagio is a great place to work.
Beautiful place.
Beautiful place. The customers are great. The staff is wonderful. And I have to tell people who keep asking me, Duke, when are you going to retire? And I kind of laugh and I chuckle and I say, I'm going to probably walk away when it's not fun coming to work. And they laugh. Fun coming to work? Are you kidding me? And then I have to stop and think. And I told my best friend, you have a different attitude about your job if you don't have to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As many dealers that work at the Bellagio make good money and experience the same wonderful things I do, many of them, it's like a job they have to go to work at, so they're always complaining about something.
Right.
There's nothing to complain at the Bellagio, really, but I guess it's human nature. So I feel lucky.
Well, there's an old saying in the music business. If you want to hear a musician complain, give him a gig.
Oh, boy. You could say that about a couple of dealers here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true. It's like, they're complaining when they're out of work, but they're also complaining when they have work. So.
Human nature, I'm sure.
It is. Yeah, everybody.
I'm sure.
Well, listen, Duke, this has been wonderful. I've got your wife, Jenny, yesterday, and I got you today. This I got the whole family. Got JT a few months ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, I'll tell you, I was looking forward to this, but wow, what a great walk down memory lane.
Yeah.
Brought back a lot of good memories.
I'm glad it was
Thanks
good
so
for you.
much, Ross. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure, and I hope this brings you a few customers next year, too.
Oh, could be.
Yeah, you never know. All right, Duke, we're going to say goodbye.
All
Thank
right.
you very much, Duke.
My pleasure.
All right, bye-bye.
The Ross Around Backstage podcast wants to thank the group Frame by Frame for the bumper music you are listening to now. Please subscribe to my podcast so you won't miss another new episode in the future. I am also looking for sponsors for the Ross Around Backstage podcast. Please email me at rosspallone@me.com. Remember to click the like button, and thanks for listening.